Hello everyone, and welcome to the Helioscope PDX YouTube channel, where we share our comic book knowledge with you through interviews and tutorials. I'm Leila del Duca, and today I'm talking with artist Terry Dodson on his newest creator-owned series, Adventureman. Adventureman is written by Matt Fraction, it's drawn and colored by Terry Dodson, inked by Rachel Dodson, and lettered by Clayton Cowles. For some backstory, if you're unfamiliar with Terry Dodson, he's been drawing comics for decades, and his wife, Rachel, has been inking his comics for decades. Creatives, we all know it's challenging to live and work with our creative and romantic partners sometimes. So I was happy that Terry let me ask the question, do you have any advice for creative couples? We also talk about what he has learned from working on Adventureman, what tools he uses, and why he started coloring his own work years ago. Without further delay, here is the interview.
Hi, Terry. Thank you so much for joining me for this interview.
Hey, Leila. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's really cool to be interviewing you because you are one of my earliest comic book inspirations. Everything becomes so normalized once you become part of Helioscope and everyone's a comrade, right. But this was like one of the moments where I was like, oh, I don't think I ever would have imagined interviewing this guy years later. So thank you so much for all of the work you've done.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about comics. It's because, everybody comes in in the comics as fans of comics. And then once you cross that line of the professional, you're hanging with the people that you grew up to and you're friends with them. You see them at conventions all the time, or it's that wall it breaks down really quickly once you become a professional, because I think it's the love of comics that we have as fans. We carried it into being pros, and it's like once you are a fellow professional, we drop all that and we're all equals, which is a pretty nice thing about this medium.
Well, I'm going to get into these questions, which I've said already that I didn't want to ask the typical comic book questions because anyone could Google an interview with you and probably find those answers. So first question is, the color work in Adventureman is awesome. I didn't realize you were coloring your own work. When and why did you decide to start coloring yourself?
Well, we'll do with the long answer. Okay. I think that all my formal education for art was in college. I mean, I had taught myself to draw up through high school, and then in college, I started taking drawing classes first term, not as an art major, but just for fun to fill out my time, I guess. And so I took a drawing class, and then the second term I took like a drawing design class, and I added like art history that third term, and then the next year I actually added in painting. And so basically, I learned to classical drawing and painting, and so by the time I'm in my fourth year of college, I was working in comics. I'd become a penciler, but I had all this painting skill, all this color skill that I couldn't do anything with. And so it was always a goal of mine to figure out how to paint myself in comics. But I knew, when I broke in, you were a penciler and inker or a colorist. You were very, specific skill you had. You didn't do it all. It was very rare that someone could do their own work. Because there was no Photoshop around. You had to actually paint your own work. So when I started, that just wasn't a possibility. But it was always kind of frustrating because I always saw my work in full color. I always knew what I wanted it to look like. I had these images in my head, and then with the advent of Photoshop, approximately let's say 2000 or so, I could see people, other artists, coloring their own work, and going, hold on, this is a possibility. There's all these things I have in my head I can actually get out on the page. And so I'll say in 2000, 2001, I started playing with Photoshop and just using my sketchbook material because I was penciling monthly books at the time. I didn't have time to color myself. And then I started working on a project in Europe, and I said, this is the book that I will do my colors on. So I scanned my pencils and colored my pencils, because that's the technique I've been playing with out of my sketchbook material anyways. And so that was it. I didn't develop the skill to work fast enough in coloring to do it for like Marvel or DC projects. But I think around 2008, when I was still drawing Wonder Woman, from then on, which has been 12 years now, I've colored all my own covers. And then I've colored, this will be the third series of Critter on stuff that I've colored myself. And I think Rachel and I did a X-Men Fantastic Four book over this winter, which Laura Martin colored, and we did the colors on the covers. But I think maybe the next book I do at Marvel or DC will be I'll color it myself. But ironically, I'm actually doing a book for DC right now, which is black and white. And so I'm actually unlearning again everything I've learned for 20 years of coloring my own work. I mean, my work has become so specific. The black and white work has become so specific to my coloring, to serve my coloring. So now I'm drawing a black and white story that it will only be black and white. I keep having to undo what I'm doing. I mean, I love that stuff, but it's just this, it's a constant. Every single panel, I'm kind of thinking, this is black and white. I am not coloring this, and I don't want to scan it in and do grayscales, and because I can do all that kind of stuff. I want it to be a pure black and white story, like what I remember people doing. The Batman black and white projects were kind of cool, but that was always something where this is where you show off what you can do, and so it's that part of my skill set I need to kind of reinvent.
When you talk to employers about wanting to color your own work, is everyone pretty receptive, or have you gotten pushback about that?
No, basically, Rachel and I have been working together since 1996, 97. So since then, when people hire me, they know they're hiring us. And what it does, we do good work, yes, but it also means you're just getting your work from one source, basically, or plus a colorist. So now since I've been coloring my stuff for so long, it's just, they're getting the whole art package. It just makes, when Marvel or DC or whoever calls me to their cover, they know when they ask me, they know they're getting a full color image. Unless they don't, sometimes, and 1 out of every 30 don't know that that's what I do. But it makes their life a lot easier not having to make that extra phone call to a colorist or to an inker or whatever. And then I think I've actually colored this last couple of years. I've colored like a page or two when I've done like little tiny projects for Marvel or DC. And that's actually like the first interiors I've colored for a Marvel or DC book, which is really simple compared to the creator own stuff I do. So yeah, so now I know that I can actually do something like that at next time. But also it's nice to actually do the artwork and then just walk away and let the responsibility of all the colors to fall to someone else too. But the creator own work I put so much time into that it's really important to me that it turns out the way I want it to turn out.
So I personally learn something new every project I work on. I'm sure a lot of cartoonists are the same. What did you learn from working on Adventureman? It's
been a 4-year grind of actually doing it. So I've learned so many things because, the book starts off in the 40s. And so I was always a fan of Art Nouveau, which is art style from the 1890s to about 1920. Art Nouveau kind of turns into Art Deco. They're not related. They're a pathway of how design art went. And they're kind of similar, but they're really not at all. And so this book was about Art Deco. And so I had to kind of forget what I knew about Art Nouveau and then go back in Art Deco and figure that out. So that's kind of a surface thing that I figured out. But I will actually say the thing I really learned about by working on Adventureman was to delegate, because I'm labeled as the co-creator and as the penciler and the colorist, but I think a better role for me on this book would be the producer, I guess. It's like Adventureman is Matt's idea. It's his story, and then we work on it from there. And he gives me a plot, and I add to it or subtract or whatever. So it's Matt's baby. But as far as everything else goes, the scheduling, the layouts, the design, I know what I want to do, all that stuff. I kind of tell people this is what we're going to do. And so I've really managed to figure out on this project to go find a designer who I'd like to work with and have him help me do that stuff, as opposed to me doing it all myself. It's so much work to draw and color your own book, especially when it's creator owned. It's just everything you're doing, every single page is a brand new design problem, which is fun to solve, but it's just time consuming. And so by delegating things, it's made my life a little bit easier. Especially,
awesome.
It's as simple as when all the files that I'm not specifically loading my files onto the image site. I'm letting my editor deal with that. It's just those little tiny steps that takes. Though today I spent the morning getting stuff off to one of the foreign publishers because it's just easier for me to do it myself. I'm the artist in the book, but I'm actually the one that's getting the files to the publisher as well, because that's how I see these projects. It's very easy for me to manage the whole thing, but then picking who can help me out on it is the key thing.
All right, next question. You have been in this business for decades now. What is something you wish that interviewers would ask you about your own projects, but they never tend to ask you?
I would have to say nuts and bolt questions about actually producing the work itself. I mean,
Uh-huh.
that seems like what I think most artists want to know those answers to, but most people who interview me either don't think to ask me that question or don't, that concept of actually, what kind of pencil do I don't actually answer that kind of question that often. What pencil do I use? What paper do I use? These things that I think most artists want to know. And I mean, they're boring everyday topics to me, but I know that that's gold to anybody that wants to be an artist.
Can I ask you some of those questions now?
Yeah.
Yeah. What paper do you use? What kind of pencils do you draw with? And
Okay.
how much do you, yeah.
I think I've used Strathmore Bristol board, either 400 or 500 series 2-ply since I could buy it. I mean, Marvel and DC always used that kind of paper. The thing is, the quality on the paper has changed so much. So I've gone from a 2-ply to a 3-ply, from the 4 to the 5. Now I'm back on the 4 series with a 2-ply because Mark Schultz and I talk about this a lot, about the quality of the paper, and we've decided that the 400 series, the lesser series, is actually is better paper than the 5, because we feel like they did something goofy at the printers with the 500 series.
Interesting. Is it the texture then?
Yeah. There's just It's just we Rachel and I both like a toothier paper, rougher paper, and there's a line between being something you could draw on and something that's just too rough. I really don't like anything that's smooth, and that vellum is I don't know, it just makes it that much easier to work. Otherwise, I can, as you know, I guess you will adapt to any drawing material or instrument. You can as an artist, it's all in your head. It's just a matter of just practice. You'll figure it out. But it's really nice just to be able to go to a piece of paper that I know exactly the results I'm going to get. That's pretty nice. As far as the pencil, since the dawn of time, since while I was still in college, I used the Stadler 2 or whatever, the 2mm lead holders that hold this lead. I go between an HB and a B depending on the time of year, because I find the humidity in Oregon especially changes. I used to use F from Stadler, but they quit making it. That's kind of like, as I've seen through my career, is that I find something that I like and then they quit making it, which is weird, because it's not like I'm buying exotic materials. They're pretty much standard. I use a Colorace Prismacolor light blue pencil. It acts like it feels like a real pencil. Those non-photo blue pencils that I used to use that just felt like wax. Maybe 15 years ago or 20 years ago, I found those to use because animators were using those. And so I was buying the red ones and the purple ones, and I looked at the light blue one, I go, that looks kind of like what I use anyway. So it's like, oh man, it's so much nicer. It's erasable.
The lead holder, do you use that for your comic pages and your blue colored pencil for sketches?
I do all my rough work with the blue pencil.
Okay.
And actually my sketch pages, all my sketch work, I actually use a red pencil, because that's kind of like my signal that I'm no longer working. I'm in my sketchbook now. It's a different, I really try to do that. It's a lot more fun just because it looks different than what I do every day. I think it's psychological, but it switches that light off in my head that I'm not doing paid work for a story or whatever. I'm actually drawing my sketchbook. It's supposed to be fun. There's a lot less room for error with the red pencil. It's not as erasable, so it makes you work a little bit differently. It makes me work like I feel like I could fall off a cliff, which is kind of fun because take it, kind of go out of your way to try to make it a little bit more difficult for yourself. So when you reach higher, you'll reach higher than you normally would, and when you fall, you'll fall farther. But at least there's that chance you'll excel more by going off and doing something new.
You and Rachel have been working together for a very long time.
Right.
You on layouts and pencils and now colors, and Rachel on inks. Do you have any advice for creative couples? Any tips and tricks you've developed over the years to navigate your working creatively together?
Yeah, have different hobbies. Have some of the same hobbies. I mean, we've lucked out that we like so much of the same music and radio programs, or there's so much of the stuff that we can put on in the background that we don't have to argue over, and that we know where the sensitive areas are that we stay away from. So when I'm working by myself, I'll play that, or vice versa for her. So obviously compromise, and we know what the other person does not want to hear or see or do. And then I think for a long time now, since I both draw and color, we don't always work the same hours. So Rachel works less hours, so that we're not spending as much time around each other in the workspace. And then on weekends when we're not working, do something together that's fun to do. That's totally separate from work, obviously, because that's why you're together. You're not together for work. You're together for not working. You know, that's huge.
Okay, one last question. What is your favorite non-comics hobby?
I'd say for right now during COVID, it'd have to be travel because I can't do it. I mean, I love traveling. If it's going to another city or another country, another state, just always seeing new stuff and exploring new stuff. That is like one of my favorite things to do, and I haven't been able to do it for 6 months. So that's my top hobby right now that I'm not doing.
Adventureman issue 4 is out today on October 7th, 2020, and volume 1, which collects issues 1 through 4, is going to be out on November 25th. You can find Adventureman 1 through 4 at your local comic book shop, where you can also pre-order volume 1, or you can follow the Amazon affiliate link below, which will take you to our grand overlords at amazon.com, where you can also pre-order through them. Here's my obligatory subscribe, comment, or like. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you here next time.